I would like to ask Professor Krzysztof Pyrć to take the floor. Krzysztof is the head of Laboratory of Virology at the Małopolska Center of Biotechnology of the Jagiellonian University. You will actually a biologist. Many of you might know Krzysztof from Pandemic.box or other medias and so on. But Krzysztof prepared for us a presentation today on titled Pandemic.box, where science and politics meet. I think he's very well experienced in that. He's been serving as the consultant for the European Commission in terms of the crisis and the scientific advice in terms of the pandemics. He's been a member of the advisory board of the Polish Academy of Sciences in terms of COVID, and also, if I may say, an infamous group of advisors to the Prime Minister in Poland in terms of the COVID-19. Krzysztof, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So thank you so much for being here, despite the delays. I was going to introduce myself, but thank you so much for doing this for me. I have less to talk about. Just referring to the title, the Pandemic.box is actually a term coined, a very specific term coined for a very different purpose. Pandemic.box is a virtual box where we're supposed to put drugs for future diseases. It was coined many, many years ago before the pandemic, but it was empty when I started to use this term presentations to non-specialists, and I realized that actually the Pandemic.box has many, many meanings. Everybody understood it differently. People were coming saying, "Oh, that's a very nice name. It means that we are all in the same box." And I was actually thinking, like, no, that's completely opposite from what I was going to say. But I thought it's good because it brings meanings. A few words about me, because as Tomasz said, if somebody knows me, usually it's like this professor from the TVN, which is not really the thing I would like to be. I mean, I don't mind TVN, but it's just about the television. Just a few words about my education. By training, I'm a molecular biologist. After I got my master in Krakow, I moved to Amsterdam, where I spent quite a few years doing my PhD in infectious diseases, specializing in coronaviruses, actually. After that, I went to States for some time to work with Ralph Borick, and then I decided to come back to Poland to set up my own research team. It took me quite a time because at the moment I was coming back to Poland, there was no virology in Krakow. So we had to build everything from scratch. Fortunately, I was able to find great people. With some of them, I'm still collaborating. And based on the structural funds from the EU, we managed, with a lot of people, of course, around, to create something pretty unique. This unique thing, is actually MCD. At the time we were thinking about this, 2007, 2008, there was a playground, but we thought about creating the independent, fully research-oriented institute that would be really competitive. And by competitive, I'm not meaning the strategy we want to be competitive, but all of us are actually evaluated every 3 years by International Advisory Board. We don't fulfill the requirements, we're just asked to go away. And this really happens. Also, on one way, it's kind of scary. On the second way, it's good because it keeps the spirit up, and only people who really want to do science are working there, which is not standard. In many institutions, I'm not even talking about Poland only, many scientific institutions, that's not really standard, that there is so much rotation with PIs. So currently, I'm appointed at the university as a full professor for quite a few years. And just one slide about what we are doing there. So it's not about the policy making, not about counseling, not about communication, but about the science we do. Because the major part of my work, my life actually, is science. So we are trying to understand actually how it happens that the virus is actually infecting you, how it attaches to the cell, how it enters the cell, how it replicates, how it actually changes the cell into the factory for viruses, and actually faces down the immune systems of your body. So how it hides from your body, then how it produces progeny, and actually how it is being transmitted to another cell and to another host. So how it can be that mother was here feeling not well, and maybe, just maybe, in 5 days when some of us may feel not so well. So what we do, we try to understand on a very low level how it happens. On a very low level, I mean by that on the atomic level, we do a lot of structural biology, using crystal structures, using cryo-EM, so seeing how these guys are interacting on the protein level, protein RNA level, but also on the single cell level, so doing a lot of cell biology and the tissue level. That's something that's very important for us. So we're trying actually, to actually reconstitute the human body on plastic, because not the whole human body, parts of it. So we do a lot of tissue culture, 3D tissue cultures from primary cells, trying to reconstitute full tissues, including the immune system, including the variety of cells that are built in different tissue. And as I said, we use 3D tissue culture, we use organoids, and currently we are going into several collaborations trying to actually tie them together. So we have a mini body. Why is it important? This is because if you want to use animals to study viruses, you have a big problem because, for instance, SARS-CoV-2 doesn't infect humans, but it doesn't infect mice. So actually, if you want to infect mice, you have to adapt the virus or change the mouse, and then you get this beautiful model where if you infect mice with virus, they got encephalitis, and then you can just conclude how relevant it is data that is to the clinic. That's what we aim for. We aim for the clinic. And that's actually the second part of the work. So the first part, I would say 60% is a basic science, basic research, understanding how this tick within our body in a relevant model. And the second part is actually translation. Translation for the industry, translation for the society. And then when I say translation, I don't mean we test something and then we sell it to the company. We really are running currently several pretty big programs, for instance, for drug discovery. We run it, of course, in bilateral collaborations with chemists, with companies, but also with pretty large networks. One of the examples is a CURVE project. It's a project which includes several very good universities in Europe, but also the pharma, the industry, like Pfizer, like Bayer, like Takeda, like Janssen, who actually are there to let us know what they need. So this close collaboration, bringing all these people together in one room, allows us to align what we do with what the industry needs. So we are trying to translate the basic research, the understanding of the infection into the clinic. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We are now finishing a project that is actually cure pets. You click on this QR code. There is a short presentation from my PhD student with whom we set up a spin-off company, and we are actually now finishing with the project with beautiful data from the clinical trials. But that's the science. And actually, that's not what I was asked to talk about, but I prefer that part. I was asked to talk about communication, policy making, and actually scientific advice. Because we had this beautiful lecture today, beginning of the session, about scientific advice on the EU level. And then it's beautiful. I truly admire the way it works here. But then there is a problem that it didn't work. We had COVID, we had crisis, and then things went pretty wrong. And the worst thing we can do is just to say, well, it happens. Because then we are going to repeat it. I will come back to this idea actually. But I was thinking actually yesterday, what exactly I would like to tell you about policy making, knowing that there will be a person who will explain you how it works at the level of the EU. And then I came to the conclusion that maybe I will show where I do see the biggest holes. I know it's not good to talk about negative things, but things were not so good when it came to the final version of the presentation. But things didn't go so good when it came to Poland, for instance, but also to many other countries. But Poland was top of the excess death number and the number of people hospitalized and people sick because of COVID. So what actually went wrong? So first of all, we had many presentations today about communication, about science brokerage, about the lobbying, because sometimes it's lobbying actually. But we didn't talk about one thing, which I believe will be important in coming years, looking at what is happening in the world, about science communication when there is a crisis. Science communication when there is no time to establish this beautiful networks to wait for things, but things go rough. And then when you want to communicate something to the politicians, we want to convince them, you write this beautiful documents, and they may disbelieve you. And as we've heard, there is a big issue that scientists should not do things that politicians want, because then they lose trust. When you have a crisis, politicians actually don't come to you asking, well, what do you think? Then we'll implement it. They come and say, we want this. And then they actually try to push you into the direction that they, instead of using the science, they actually are sometimes abusing. This happened a lot in the States. This happened a lot in Poland. This happened a lot in many countries in the world. So there is this. The first thing I want to say is that we need really to think it over as scientists, but also as policymakers and as brokers, how to deal with the problem, because there will be another pandemic. When we're talking about climate crisis, it's not about that we're going green and it will be a beautiful world. We will face a climate crisis. So we will have this crisis coming. I'm not even mentioning the war or killing robots. It's kind of too scary, you know. This will happen, and that's something we should think of, how to address the science communication in the situation of the crisis when things go rough. Second thing is, I truly love the idea of scientific advice mechanism in the EU. You have some PR, you have high-level advisors, scientific advisors. They merge science, they communicate science, they provide the authority. The problem is that in the ideal world, this should go down as a waterfall, bringing this information down. It should go to member states, this should go to local governments. The truth is not. When you remember beginning of 2020, we had a situation where every single country was asking to form this medical councils, scientific advice councils. And it was a complete mess. There was no transfer of information from top to bottom. There's a second thing I want to communicate today, that in a situation as we have now with member states, with certain political situation, we as scientists, we as communicators, we as brokers of information, we need to consider that we need to provide reliable information at different levels. It's not enough to provide a very good support on top. We had these beautiful documents from the EU coming, but nobody followed. The decisions were made on each level separately. So we need to provide information also to the national governments. We need to provide information to local governments, and we need to provide information to society. And that's something we were trying to do for a long time. As Tomasz mentioned, we had an example of how things may go really wrong with the Medical Council, where at some point we truly just quit. We just said, well, that's enough. We don't want to take part in that anymore. It was beginning of 2021 when we knew already the situation is stabilizing. And we should think about this now before the next crisis occurs, how to communicate to different levels, or how to create a system that, except for excellent work for the European Commission, will allow to waterfall this information down and transfer the information to decision makers and to societies. This didn't happen. I know it's beautiful on paper, but simply didn't happen during this crisis. So there is for sure a space to improve here. And the third point, actually, that is a problem. We're living in bubbles. We're living in bubbles as people, and we're living in bubbles as experts, as scientists. We like to hurt. So there is a medical council, right? Great people, all of them doctors. There was only one who was not a medical doctor in the council. The problem is not that they are, or these groups are incorrect. I'm just saying that if you have 15 medical doctors in one room, there will probably be bias somewhere because they are medical doctors. I had a huge pleasure to co-chair, vice chair, the think tank by Polish Academy of Sciences, led by Professor Duszyński, the former president of the Polish Academy of Sciences. And this was an example how such a think tank, how such an advisory board, maybe on the lower level, of course not the EU level, but lower level should work, where we invited collaboration, not only virologists, not only medical doctors, not only biochemists, but we had psychologists, we had geographers, we had a sociologist, we had a guy who was specializing in economy. So we had this variety of views that allowed us actually to coin an advance. We're actually informing the society. I think that pro bono with no retranslation to the government, but we're informing the society using the white papers and statements on the current status of the knowledge in the field of COVID-19. So these are actually the three main points I wanted to make. First one, we have to consider the crisis is coming. We don't want to be like the guys in the joke. So the winter has surprised the road workers. We don't want to be surprised. We know the things are coming. So we should make a concept of how to communicate in crisis, and we should be aware of the system. We should inform different levels of organizations, and we should improve the system waterfall, and we should actually be more diverse. We should go out. We should live here. You may ask, so what are you doing except for complaining? Well, we do a lot. Actually, last week I was in Paris. We deployed a new project. It's called Durable. The European Commission has formed an agency which is called HERA, which is designed to prevent such drama during the next pandemics and some medical crises, health crises. And this network encompasses of 19 research teams from whole Europe, who are actually now joining together with the Biden's funding, joining together to actually be able to answer questions to the decision makers, like what is impacting us? What is the risk? Do we have drugs? Do we have vaccines? Is there anybody who is at risk? What can we do? How is it being transmitted? What is the logical action? So this network is actually to provide the actual scientific evidence, not only by talking. This will be not advisory group. This will be a group who will, in case of a crisis, will be able to go to the laboratories in whole Europe and to do the work very rapidly in coordinated fashion. We have very good names on board, like Marion Kaufmans, Christian Drosten, Johan Nates from Belgium, actually from here, Melbourne, and to actually act directly on spot and provide this information. So there are things happening, but we as scientists are also responsible for what will happen. Okay, full stop. Can you please turn it off, because there was my email there. Yeah, almost that. Not so many slides. Yeah, we are kind of responsible for what will happen. So with that, I would like to invite you, if you have any questions regarding my work as a scientist. That's my main thing. My work as a translator to society, to industry of science, of virology, of molecular biology, or my activities as the advisor, as the communicator. Please free to contact me. There are plenty of options. All these channels are open. With that, I would like to thank you so much for being here on my time and for your time. Thank you.